Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Alex, and today we're going to go through my playoff predictions. Now, to be honest, I've thought about some of these matchups, but some of them I'm still kind of not sure about, so we'll kind of talk through it as we go. But before we do start, if you do end up enjoying this video, make sure you guys like and sub. Try to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year, so it would mean a lot. Anyways, let's get started. All right, so we're over here on NBA.com, and we're going to look at their Pick'em Bracket Challenge. We're actually going to participate in this, and they got us started off in the Western Conference. So we'll just start from the top. We got the Denver Nuggets 1 seed versus the 8 seeded Minnesota Timberwolves. And as a lot of you probably know, I am a Denver Nuggets fan. So I am going to kind of go into that fandom, and I am going to pick the Denver Nuggets. Now, do I want to do it in 4? Honestly, I can't even see. Hold on, let me get my glass. I am so blind. I can't even like read the in 4 and 5. So Denver in 4, 5, 6, or 7. I'm tempted. It's going to be 5 or 6 in my opinion. The Denver Nuggets, I think, pose a lot of problems for Minnesota, and it's mainly not because I think like obviously Denver is the better team, but for the Minnesota Timberwolves, I just think the front court of Cat and Gobert is just not going to work against someone like the Nuggets, who the entire offense runs through Jokic. Karl Anthony Towns is just not a good perimeter defender, and now that they're out Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels, I think that's really going to hurt them in the long run in terms of their front court depth and especially their defense. Cat is just an awful defender, and he's probably going to have to match up with Jokic or Aaron Gordon, and I just don't think he's going to do a great job on either of them. Denver Nuggets have a lot of ball movement. That's just how they thrive. I think the Denver Nuggets, I'm going to say 6. I do think the Minnesota Timberwolves defense may cause a problem just because with their length, but it's just not going to be as good. And also, one thing to keep in mind is that the Nuggets have also kind of struggled, especially towards the end of the regular season. And they've also not been playing a lot of the games, especially their starters. And the Timberwolves have been going through the play-in, so they're a little bit more, ready to go into this playoff environment. So I think the Timberwolves could possibly steal a game on the road. But ultimately, I don't know. I just think the Nuggets are going to win this. I think they're by far the better team. So I'm going to go Denver Nuggets in 6. Next up, we got the 4-5 matchup. We have the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Clippers. And in my opinion, this is going to be the Suns. They should easily win this, especially since Paul George shouldn't be here for a majority of this playoff round, or he may not even be there at all because he's been dealing with his own injury that he sustained later in the regular season this year. I think for the Suns, there's just too many offensive weapons with Booker, KD, CP3, and DeAndre Ayton. I think that's just going to cause a lot of problems, especially since you're losing a lot of productivity on the offensive end and defensive end from Paul George. I also feel like the small ball lineups that the Clippers may want to run won't necessarily do anything to the Suns. If anything, I think that would make things a lot easier for the Suns. And when you think about Zubac, while he is a really good starting center, I do think he does have some limitations on the defensive end, which I think could easily be exploited by players like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and CP3, who are all great mid-range shooters. Zubac is most likely probably going to be playing in the drop, and that's just not going to work out with all these elite mid-range shooters. Same thing with Mason Plumlee. If you don't think Zubac is going to work, Mason Plumlee is definitely not going to work. So I just think in that alone, I think the defensive matchup is just not going to be good, and it's not going to be in the favor of the Clippers. Although I do think the Clippers do have some solid defenders on their team, especially on the perimeter. I think ultimately it comes down to that front court defense, and also because Paul George is out, I really do think the Clippers have to rely more on their guard depth, and I just don't know if it's good enough to really make up for what Paul George brings. I love Terrence Mann. I love Westbrook, especially, he's going to have a limited role, and he has been playing very well with the Clippers. I just don't think it's going to be enough. So I think I'm going to go with the Suns, and to me, it's 5 or 6. I'm going to go 6, and that's just kind of me assuming that Paul George probably does come back at some point in the series. But it should be a pretty easy 6. Next up, we have the Sacramento Kings and Golden State Warriors. But man, I don't know, because I think both of these teams cause a lot of problems for each other. For the Warriors, I think a lot of people have the Warriors probably upsetting the Kings in the series. And a reason why I find a really hard time picking the Warriors is because they've just been so bad on the road, and they do not have home court advantage in this series. So to me, if they were going to win, this series has to go virtually 6 or 7. I would find it very hard to believe that by the time we get to the playoffs that the Warriors are all of a sudden going to become one of the best road teams in the NBA. I just have a really hard time believing that. And also their defense on the road is probably some of the worst. It's on par with like the Rockets and the Pistons, teams who are trying to get Victor Wembanyama. So and for the Kings, like they are one of the best offenses in the NBA. I think you could argue they are the best offense, especially when you look at the numbers like offensive rating and stuff like that. If you have the best offense at home going against the worst defense from the team that's on the road, man, I don't know. I just don't think it's going to be pretty for the Warriors. However, I guess one thing that is in the Warriors' favor is that they do have the championship experience. They will have the best player on the court in Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson has been very good as well. Wiggins is also going to be coming back, but from what I read, it looked like he's going to have a minutes restriction to start off, and he's also possibly going to come off the bench. We'll have to see about that. Ultimately, though, who do I have coming out of this series? I still think the Warriors can do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just on some sort of false hope. I just think the Kings lack a lot of playoff experience, and a lot of questions that I have about the Warriors on the defensive end can also be seen through the Kings. But the Kings in general are just not a great defensive team. At least the Warriors, when they're at home, are one of the best defensive teams in the league. And I think that on its own could help them lead them to, a 6-7 game series. When it comes down to it in a game 7, I think I just believe in the Warriors a little bit more because of what they've been through in the past, decade. So I'm going to go Warriors in 7 on this one. And for our last first round matchup in the Western Conference, we got the Memphis Grizzlies and LA Lakers. And I think, again, this is another one that's kind of a toss up because I think both teams can really match up together really well. However, honestly, I still don't know who I'm going to pick. For the Lakers, they've really turned things around ever since the mid-season trade deadline. Obviously, additions like D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt have been huge for their success, especially on the defensive end. They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Once they made those trades to get, especially for Jared Vanderbilt, they became one of the best defensive teams in the league. So I think that definitely helps against, a high-powered offense with Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and Dylan Brooks to a certain extent, even though he is a shot chucker. So I think the defense is really going to be a huge lean in for the Lakers if they do want to win this series. However, for the Grizzlies, defensively at least, it's going to look kind of bad. Yes, they do have Jaren Jackson Jr. In my opinion, he is the defensive player of the year. But the one thing I'm really having questions about with the Grizzlies is, one, is Jaren Jackson Jr. going to stay out of foul trouble? And a big reason for that is number 2, the Grizzlies don't really have a lot of center depth going into playoffs this year. Brandon Clark and Steven Adams are going to be out, so that pretty much leaves them with Xavier Tillman, who is a undersized big. And they also have Santi Aldama, who isn't technically a center, but he is like a power forward, and he's like 6'10", so he does give you some size there, but we're going to be seeing a lot of Triple J minutes at center, I believe. And although I think Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 could be a very good thing, you're going to have to add players like David Roddy or Santi Aldama at the 4 or 3. And I think honestly, just when you're going against the Lakers and with how big their lineup can also be, I just think that won't be good for them defensively just over, a long series. And I think that's kind of where I come to this. It's going to be like the Kings and Warriors. I think it's going to have to go 6 or 7 games. And honestly, I still don't even know who I want to go with. If I'm using the same logic for the Warriors, if this series does go 6 or 7, I think I kind of have to go with the Lakers. They have LeBron. They have AD. I think I have to just trust these guys in these certain situations. And also just to pick on the Grizzlies a little bit more, I think their half-court offense can be really bad. Same thing with the Lakers. I think sometimes they can get very stagnant if LeBron isn't the guy running the offense. But outside of Ja Morant, they don't really have any sort of half-court creation. Obviously, they have some very good offensive players, but I think it all kind of relies on how good Ja Morant is going to be as a playmaker. And he has shown to be very good, but when he does go against really good defenses, that could cause him some trouble. So I think ultimately I am going to pick the Lakers, and I think I'm going to pick them in 7, just like the Warriors. I think it's going to be 2 very similar series where I think it can go either way. And honestly, if you think the Grizzlies are going to win this series, I would not blame you at all. But I do not think that it's going to be, Lakers beat them in 5 or Grizzlies beat them in 5. I think this is going to be a very close series. Now we're on to the semifinals of the Western Conference, and we got the Denver Nuggets versus the Phoenix Suns. And this is where I kind of have to put my, fan cap away. It's off. My invisible hat is off. And honestly, again, the West is very hard. It's going to get a lot easier when we get into the East. But I think for the Suns, when they go against the Nuggets, I think they do cause a lot of problems. Again, their mid-range shooting is really great. Their three-point shooting is also really good. The one problem I do have with the Suns, though, is that their rim pressure just isn't good enough. And honestly, I think it needs to be really good, especially when you have Jokic as a center. He's just not going to be protecting the rim. So I think the Suns could potentially get better looks at the rim. I just don't know how much they're going to be going to the rim looking for layups. They mostly shoot mid-range jump shots or, three-pointers. So while I think they can take advantage of Jokic, I just don't know how much. And for the Nuggets going against the Suns, I really don't think DeAndre Ayton stands a chance against Jokic. I think this is a pretty bad matchup for him. He couldn't guard Giannis, and I honestly don't think he's going to be able to guard Jokic as well. It is just not as good as the Nuggets. And I know a lot of people aren't believing in the Nuggets, especially with how bad they've been performing in, the last couple weeks of the regular season. But I honestly believe that is just them coasting. I think in the first round, again, I had the Nuggets in 6. I do think it will take them some time to get into that playoff mode. But I think by the time they get into this series, they're going to be in it and they're going to be locked in. I don't know. I also feel like the Denver Nuggets being able to build chemistry throughout these last 3 to 4 years with each other has really been great. And even though Kevin Durant, I think aren't they undefeated, or they only, lost 1 or 2 games with Kevin Durant on the Suns so far. They've been an unstoppable force. I totally get that. But I think we do have to take into account that championship teams are not built overnight. So with that being said, and kind of, my problems with the Suns and their depth and maybe their defense against Jokic and their, off-ball cuts, I think I am going to go the Denver Nuggets on this one. But again, it is not going to be close. I think this could honestly go 7. It can definitely go 7 for sure. Now moving on to the last semifinal round, we got the Golden State Warriors and the LA Lakers. And this, again, is another series that I just don't know who is going to come out of it. The West it's just so wide open. I think it could go either way. But when it comes down to it, I do think I have the Warriors coming out of this one. Again, this is going to be a close series. I don't think it will go 7. I think at this point, the Warriors will have home court advantage. I think this will go 6 for sure. The reason why I do pick the Warriors over the Lakers, though, is that I think the Lakers defense is really good. It's been one of the best, like I said earlier in the video. But I think the Warriors cause a lot of problems with just all their off-ball action. I don't think the Lakers have done a good job overall throughout the season covering teams like the Warriors or just other teams who have some really great off-ball players. I think that's going to cause a lot of problems for them. And also, by this time, I would hope that Andrew Wiggins is in the starting lineup, and he's definitely going to help their defense and their offense in general. And because the Warriors defense, I think, is really good on the road, I think the Lakers are going to have a really hard time winning on the road, especially when we just look at the playing game that they had against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Even despite the Timberwolves struggling to score, the Lakers were as well. And again, they were on the road, and the Timberwolves aren't as great of a defensive team, in my opinion, as the Warriors are at home. So I just think the Lakers are going to go on runs where they're just struggling to score, and they have to rely on LeBron to, play make for all these open shots. I think D'Angelo Russell could be streaky at times, and even Dennis Schroeder. If Dennis Schroeder is playing better than D'Angelo Russell, I think that's just a downgrade in general at that point guard position. And you still have people on the other side like Jordan Poole, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson moving around. I think Dennis Schroeder, is a very pesky point of attack defender. But is he going to be able to guard any of those guys? I don't think so. So ultimately, I do have the Warriors coming out in that series. And that brings us to the Western Conference Finals of the Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors. And while as a Denver Nuggets fan, I would absolutely hate this matchup, I do not want to see this happening because obviously I want my team to make it to the finals. So I want, the easiest path. But if we ain't ducking smoke, I still think we can come out of the series. Again, the Warriors are not a good road team, and they are not a good defensive team on the road as well. The Nuggets are, again, one of the best offenses in the league. But while, in years past, the Warriors have really looked like one of the best matchups against Jokic and the Nuggets just in general, the Warriors just aren't as good as they have been in the past couple of years. And I think the Nuggets are better than what the Warriors were seeing originally in the past, year or two. So with the Denver Nuggets being a different team in terms of them being better and the Warriors looking like a different team and they're slightly worse from the years past, I just think the Denver Nuggets finally get over the hump. And I think the Denver Nuggets do make it to the finals. I would say it's in 6. I don't think it really goes 7. If it goes 7, the Warriors would just have to play really well on the road, and they would probably have to take a game from the Nuggets, which I just don't think is going to happen. So I got the Denver Nuggets in 6. And now we're finally moving on into the Eastern Conference. This is going to go really quick. Milwaukee Bucks. I think this is going to be Milwaukee Bucks in 5. I think the Heat could potentially steal one game, especially on this game 1. It's going to be like the Denver Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves. The Heat just played, and I think they're going to be in rhythm. The Bucks haven't really been playing their starters, especially towards the tail end of the season, so I could see them stealing a game on the road. Then after that, I think Giannis, Brook Lopez, Drew Holiday, and even a somewhat broken down Chris Middleton can still absolutely wipe the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat defensively are still very good. Offensively are one of the worst in the league, and they're going to have to go against probably the best defense in the league. I just don't really think they have much of a shot. Moving on into the next matchup, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. And I feel like some people might, flip-flop on this, but in my opinion, I think I got the Cavs. I think it's going to be in 6, but I don't think it's going to be a close 6. The Cavaliers defense is one of the best in the NBA as well, and I think they're really going to be able to do numbers on Julius Randle because they have players like Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen who are some really great versatile defenders, being able to protect the rim and switch out onto the perimeter. And I think Julius Randle has shown to just not play good in the playoffs because of his play style, and I just don't think his playoff style is conducive to winning basketball, especially in the playoffs. They do have Jalen Brunson, which I think is a great addition, and I think he will help the Knicks even compete in the series. That's why I do have the Cavs in 6. I think the series is really going to have to revolve around how good is Jalen Brunson going to be for this Knicks team, because I know for a fact Julius Randle probably is not going to be as good as he was in the regular season. Will he be as bad as he was 2 years ago in the playoffs? I fucking hope not. I hope he's not that bad, but I'm kind of expecting something like that. So because of that, I do have the Cavs winning the series. Next up, we got Philadelphia versus Brooklyn. I think this is probably going to be like the Bucks, but I actually am going to go with the good old sweep. Actually, no, I'm not going to. I'll say 5. I think the Nets, they do have a lot of defensive versatility. Mikal Bridges has obviously been stepping up in his huge role. He's averaging like 27 points with the Nets. They also have Nick Claxton, who is a great versatile defender as well. I think the Brooklyn Nets could win a game off the Sixers just based off their versatile defense alone, but I just do not think they have enough offensive firepower to even really compete in the series. Philadelphia has 3 20-point per game scores. Obviously, Joel Embiid was 34 points a game pretty much, and he did that on some super crazy efficiency. While Nick Claxton is a great defender, I just don't think he really touches Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid is going to have a great series. And even if James Harden and or Tyrese Maxey struggle, I still think that the Sixers can win this pretty easily just because of Embiid. So I got him in 5. And then we got Boston versus Atlanta. And I think this is going to be the first sweep, probably the only sweep in the playoffs. The Hawks are just not good. Trae Young has definitely had a down year. I just don't think they have the offensive talent to compete. And Boston is one of the best defenses in the NBA as well. Lots of versatility, lots of different matchups that they can throw at Trae Young. And I just don't think Trae Young is going to be able to survive in the series at all. Now we go into the semifinals, and we got the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. 2 elite defensive teams, but ultimately I think this is going to come down to offense, and to me the Bucks just have the better offense. I would go Milwaukee in 6 in this series. I think for the Cavs, Donovan Mitchell is going to have to play out of his mind. I think Darius Garland is also going to have to play out of his mind. I just don't think that the Cavs are going to be able to contain Giannis. And because of that, I think Giannis is going to be able to not only feast, get his own, but he's also going to be able to play make. He's shown to be a great playmaker. Drew Holiday has looked really good this season. Hopefully he doesn't, drop down in the playoffs like he usually does. I would also hope by this point Chris Middleton is also playing better as well, and he's trying to get back into his usual self. Brook Lopez has also taken a jump as an offensive player this year as well, on top of being, a defensive player of the year candidate. I just don't really think the Cavs have a chance to win, but I do think they do make it competitive because of their defense, which is why I do have them winning 2 games. But ultimately, I think Milwaukee just causes too many problems for the Cavs on defense, despite the Cavs being a great defensive team. I think Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, while they are going to be really good offensively, they are very small guards, and the Milwaukee Bucks are huge. It's going to be really hard to score on this Milwaukee Bucks team, especially when you have 2 bigs on the floor in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. I think that could definitely halt their production. And it's also going to be a question mark about who's going to be that 5th guy that's starting. Is it going to be Isaac Okoro? Is it going to be Karis LeVert? I think it needs to be Isaac Okoro, but again, he is also on the smaller side as well, even though he is a good defender. But then shooting is always going to be in question, despite him, performing very good as a shooter, probably in the past like 15 games of the regular season. But ultimately, I just think the Bucks are going to win the series. And then we got Philadelphia versus Boston, and I'm going to pick Boston here. I think it's going to be Boston. Is it going to be Boston in 6 or 7? I'm going to go Boston in 7. And although I think this is going to be a very close series, the talent level is elite on both sides of the ball. But ultimately, I think Boston's defense is really going to cause some problems. I would not be surprised if James Harden yet again underperforms in the playoffs. Not necessarily chokes, but he's just not playing the same like he did in the regular season. I would not be surprised. He has not shown me that he can, at least be the same, at least on a consistent basis. When it comes down to it, I also think Doc Rivers will possibly get out coached. I feel like if you're actually smart enough and you realize just how bad Doc Rivers is as a coach, I think his substitutions could be very questionable. I think it could take him some time to finally realize what he needs to do as a coach, in terms of, oh, I need to take this guy in, put this guy in, or, do the, vice versa. And I think Joe Mazzulla does a really good job at switching things up, showing players different coverages, different matchups. So ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the coach, and I also think it's going to come down to the defense, and that's ultimately in Boston Celtics' favor. And for the Eastern Conference Finals, we have Milwaukee Bucks versus the Boston Celtics, and by this point, I think a healthy Chris Middleton is going to be able to put the Bucks over the top. We saw what happened last year. If the Bucks had Middleton, I think the Bucks would have won that series. Still would have gone 7, but I think Middleton would have definitely saved them one of the games that they did lose. So maybe it actually would have been in 6. At the end of the day, though, I do think Middleton puts them over the top. Both of these teams are great offensively and defensively. And also, I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's lack of really great playmaking is going to hurt them in the long run. Again, the Bucks are great defensively, and they were great last year as well, but they're even better this year. And with Brook Lopez just playing a whole lot different on the defensive end, being able to step up more and not play in the drop, I think that's going to really hurt the Celtics, who like to take, pull-up threes off of screens. And I think it's going to put Tatum and Brown in difficult situations where they have to become playmakers. And I just don't think they're good enough playmakers at this point. So I'm going to go Milwaukee. But again, it's going to be a close series. It's going to be in 7. And now we get to the finals. And we've talked about the Denver Nuggets, what they're good at, what they're not good at. Same thing with the Milwaukee Bucks. And ultimately, even if it was Boston, whoever I had coming out the East, they're going to win the finals. I'm going to go with Milwaukee. And honestly, it's going to be in 6. This is where my Denver Nuggets fandom ends. But yeah, I think Milwaukee defensively is going to cause a lot of problems for the Nuggets. Being able to have Brook Lopez and Giannis as possible defenders for Jokic and or Aaron Gordon, flip-flopping every once in a while. Being able to switch. Lots of versatility on the defensive end, and also being great offensively. And with the Nuggets not really being the greatest defensive team, I think a lot of the struggles that the Bucks could have on offense isn't going to be as noticeable. So all in all, I think the Bucks kind of win the series a little bit easy. Again, it's in 6, so like the Nuggets are going to win 2 games. But at the end of the day, I think the Bucks are just by far the better team. I think they are the best team in the NBA, and that's why I have them winning the NBA Finals. But there you have it. Those are my NBA playoff predictions. Let me know if y'all agree with it. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and sub. Check out my socials down below in the description below. You can also check out this video somewhere on the screen where I just posted today as well some X factors for every single playoff team this year. So check that out if you're interested. Anyways, I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.